Well, good morning. Can you keep that going just for a little bit longer? Thanks. My countryman, Glenn Gould. I've been thinking a lot about what to say to you guys this morning because I found myself in a difficulty. When Deborah called me, emailed me, and said, would you speak about the gift of wisdom? I was listening to Glenn Gould. I'm working on a book about Glenn Gould, and this is the 1982 version of the Goldberg Variations. And she said, speak about the gift of wisdom. And I thought, with this music in my head, I'm smarter, I'm wiser, I'm more beautiful. And then I realized I wasn't sure what to say about wisdom at all. When I thought about the ways wisdom comes up, I remembered the Serenity Prayer, which you may know. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I thought, well, that would be wisdom worth having if you could get serenity out of it. Jerry Stiller here as Lloyd Costanza, serenity now. I want serenity now. Actually, you know what? It's kind of a sleepy morning. The rain has come in. Let's all do a serenity now right now. Serenity now. Serenity now. But it doesn't help very much, does it? And I love the idea that the demand for serenity now can become an expression of anger. Serenity now! So that didn't help. And then I thought, well, I am a professor of philosophy. And in fact, it says so right here on my card. And philosophy, as you may know, comes from the Greek philein sophia, the love of wisdom. So I profess this love of wisdom. It's what I do. I profess it. But I don't know what it is. And I thought, well, you know, what does the tradition tell me? The tradition tells me something very interesting. Socrates goes to the Delphic oracle, which I think you heard about yesterday. Inscribed across the top of the oracle at Delphi were the Greek characters that spelled the message, know thyself. Know thyself, which again, seems strangely unhelpful, yet true. Of course we should know ourselves, but what does it mean to know ourselves? When Socrates went to the Delphic oracle, the oracle told him something very interesting. She told him that he was the wisest of the Athenians. And Socrates reflected on this and he thought, how can this be? How can I be the wisest of the Athenians? I'm nothing. I'm not a statesman. I'm not an orator. I'm not a ruler. I'm not a wealthy man. And he came to the conclusion that it must mean something like this. He was the wisest because he knew nothing. The others who thought they knew, who said they knew, were less wise. They were foolish, in fact, to think that they knew. He knew that he did not know, and that was what made him wise. In philosophy, we call this the doctrina ignorantia, right? The doctrine of ignorance. Blessed ignorance. And ignorance is important, I think, for wisdom, and I got that far. I thought, I can get as far as knowing that I'm ignorant. But then what? And I thought, at that point, why not reverse the polarity of this idea of the gift of wisdom and think instead about gift? And that's what I want to say a little bit more about this morning. What is gift? Deborah's already mentioned some interesting things. I think we don't understand gifts. And I think we are so ensnared in an economy of giving and receiving that we've actually lost the logic of the gift. And here an example, this isn't actually me, but it could be. Christmas 1974, right? He gets what he wants. He's happy. He's thankful. The Christmas gift. But the commodity fetishism of this economy is overpowering. And we give in expectation of receipt. And we give thanks as part of a transaction. And the transactional nature destroys the logic of the gift because the gift is not a transaction. The true gift is something that has no price. In fact, the true gift is something for which we cannot give thanks. Because to give thanks is to pull it back into a transactional economy. But this is what we do most of the time. This is what giving and receiving looks like. And as we get older, it gets more complicated. Because now our expressions of thanks may be somewhat strained. They may be false or insincere. Thank you, I love it. I absolutely love it. Just what I wanted. You shouldn't have. You really shouldn't have. In economic terms, gifts are a deadweight loss, as it's called. It's a transaction which creates no value. And I think this is actually a clue. Economists, as so often, despite themselves, are wise. Because in saying that gifts, when they're truly gifts, are a deadweight loss, they open up a hole in the economy of transaction where we can maybe re-find the gift. The gift is a kind of openness, a kind of awaiting. It is complicated. This is a scene from Baghdad after the guilty verdict was passed on Saddam Hussein. She's thankful. This was a gift. But that's not an uncomplicated gift either. Even here, when an awaiting has been rewarded, a new situation is established which has its own complications, its own pathologies. And so we try to find something which is beyond this complication, beyond this pathology, to see the gift again. And yet, our culture outstrips us. Everywhere we turn, we find transaction. We find ourselves contracting with each other and not being open and not awaiting. The gift is something for which we cannot give thanks, I said. What does that mean? It means that the gift is not just unexpected, as the title of our session says, but sometimes unwanted. Sometimes the gift is something that you didn't know you wanted, and in fact, thought you did not want. The gift transforms you, puts you in a different relationship to yourself and to the world. And the ultimate gift is a kind of repose. Here we see a complication of a different sort. We might find, we think, the gift operating in places where the economy can't reach, in art or music. That moment of euphoria I felt listening still to Glenn Gould. That is a gift, we think. And yet we all know, I choose this example because it's notorious, this is Damien Hirst's Beautiful in My Mind Forever. I'm not sure what that has to do with the piece, but that's part of the artwork. Sold at auction in 2006 for $8 million at the time. In 2008, Damien Hirst's works were sold at the largest dollar value auction in the history of the art world. What does that mean? What happens to our conception of art when its gift seems to be constantly drawn back to the economy of price? I think we are uncomfortable with this idea that the art world is just a market, that it is just a price tag on a work. We want to find something that penetrates. We want to find in the work of art and in our own lives something which does not succumb to this. But this is itself a work. First Hawaiian Bank in Honolulu. 16 by 25 foot mural composed of uncut dollar bills. And the museum in which it was sited faced into the bank. So that people coming into the bank were confronted with this artwork that repositioned or reworked the transactional token of the dollar and spelled out this interesting and perhaps disturbing word, trust. A bank is sometimes called a trust, a bank and trust. What does the trust mean in that? What is trust? Well, we all know, as we've seen our numbers devalue in the past few weeks, that trust is the relationship behind these tokens that makes them real. The piece of paper is nothing. There's only the trust that it will be redeemed for something. And moreover, the trust that relies on is more important, is more profound than the transactions it supports. And I think this work puts us in a position of destabilization with respect to trust, with respect to economy. And we're back in a different position. We're thrown back. And I put this image of man in repose. This is by Dali. A man in repose. What is repose? I think repose is a gift. The gift of leisure, which the ancient Greeks called by the name skole, which we translate as school. Anybody who's still in school or going back to school may not think of that as leisure, but they knew what we've forgotten, perhaps. Leisure isn't consumption. Leisure isn't leisure time as we normally conceive it. Leisure is reflection. Leisure is a gift in the true sense, an openness and a waiting. It has no price. It has infinite value. You cannot give thanks for it. You can only experience it, open yourself to it. The man in repose here has the posture of this openness, posture of availability, and even, you might say, vulnerability. And I think what fascinates me about this posture is that we enact with our bodies this availability, this openness. It stands opposed to the upright posture, which is the posture of work and action. It is the refusal of uprightness. It is a deliberate taking up of the fallen position. But now not fallen away from the true path, but fallen into the availability, the openness, the true leisure of reflection. And so I got this far. Wisdom didn't get me where I wanted to go, but maybe gift did. And then I thought, no, the answer's been waiting there all along. Wisdom isn't the focus. The gift is only partially the focus. The real focus is the of. What does that of mean? The gift of wisdom. And I thought it looks like it could be an example of the double genitive in grammar. The of, in other words, modifies both ways. And I thought that's the key. The of is a kind of abyss of openness, abyss of availability, abyss of repose. Why? Because the gift of wisdom, we typically think, and I think you may have thought looking at the program or seeing that slide at the beginning, the gift of wisdom means delivering wisdom, the giving of wisdom. And we talk about that. Wisdom is something that is given. But wisdom also modifies gift. The gift of wisdom can mean the wisdom that belongs to gift. The wisdom that belongs to gift. And I thought, that's it. That's the wisdom. That's the gift. That's the of. I want to finish by telling you quickly a story which involves, I think, all of these things. And it happened not far from here, which is why it was on my mind as I came up yesterday. A couple of years ago, I was fishing on a river in the Adirondacks, just half an hour from here, the Ausable. And fishing for me is a kind of gift of the sort that I'm talking about, I think. It is an unstructured activity. It has no price. It is a simple openness to what may happen. And so I pursue this hobby not really as a hobby, not as something which is a respite or reward from work, nor as something that recharges my batteries so I can go back to work, which is the way we mostly think about our leisure time. But I pursue it, I hope, as an end in itself, to be open to it as true leisure, as a true gift. And so I'm wading on this river. It's a difficult river, large boulders covered in slippery moss and a kind of slimy covering. Beautiful river, full of pools, deep pools where brown trout and brook trout are hidden. And I had my 9-foot fly rod, and I was looking, and I could see between two large boulders a pool that I was certain held a trout. And I thought, I've got to get there. Got to get there. But it was difficult terrain, and I was wearing my hip waders, and as I moved to get through the boulders, I slipped, and I fell. I fell hard and badly, and I dislocated my shoulder. And there I was, lying in the river, and my waders were filling up with water, and my mouth was about 2 inches from the flow of the river, and I couldn't move. My right arm completely useless, excruciating pain. And I thought, this is a gift. I'm going to die here because I have been doing this thing. I have been engaging in this leisure time activity. I have made myself vulnerable and open. I have fallen now. And I thought, I don't know what to do. My mind emptied. And I didn't think, in fact. There was no thought. It was a moment of pure availability. Well, I did act, and I'm here to tell you the story because I was able to get out of the river, my arm now hanging uselessly by my side, my waders filled with water. I walked 2 miles through the woods back to my car. The car, as a kind of cosmic joke, is a standard shift. I got into the car, and I started it. All of this, I think, remarkably brave, considering how painful it was. And then, driving with my left hand and shifting with my left hand, drove to the hospital. When I got to the hospital in Lake Placid, I walked up to the reception desk, and the nurse looked at me without interest. And she said, she saw the way I was standing, and she said, "Dislocated shoulder?" And I said, "Yes." She said, "It happens all the time." Lake Placid is the dislocated shoulder capital of the world. Two reasons, 2 groups of people. Fishermen like me who fall, happens all the time, and hockey players who fight. Hockey players, if you know, when they fight, they grab the other guy's sweater and then try to hammer the blows down, and the other guy, of course, is trying to get away. So they dislocate their shoulders all the time. So there I am in where better to go with a dislocated shoulder. And as they were treating me, they give you a painkiller, which is, they call it an amnesiac now. I don't know if any of you have had these painkillers. They don't actually knock you out. And you sort of know what's going on, but then you don't remember the pain later. You know? It's very interesting. You're experiencing the pain, but it kind of goes away. It doesn't deaden you. It just makes you forget. And I was lying there thinking, wow, you know, pharmacology is awesome. Because who would have thought of this? Who would have thought of this? This is what people have been longing for all the time. They want to forget the pain. They want the pain to be something they can simply wipe away. You know? The spotless mind, the beautiful spotless mind. And I thought, well, this is, I'm glad. You know, I don't really want to experience all the pain, but in a way, I'm not glad. I would rather remember. I'd rather remember because what does this experience mean? Merely an accident? Something that was painful and difficult, but it's over? I thought, no, I can't let it go that easily. It has to be more than that. There has to be a lesson of a kind here. And I thought, it's this. It's this gift that I was not fishing, I was falling. I was not fishing, I was falling. I didn't catch any fish. I fell. And I fell because I was careless, but I fell into something. I fell into an awareness of the contingency, the fragility of my being here. And that this life, which I call mine, is not mine. The gift of wisdom, finally, is this. We do not possess our lives. We do not possess the world in which we find ourselves. We are trustees of these lives, trustees of this world. They are granted to us in trust. And trust is what makes relationship possible, but it is also the respect we should hold for ourselves. We use ourselves up. We transact ourselves. We contract ourselves. We sell our labor for money. We sell our experiences. We purchase other experiences. The logic of the gift says, no, this transactional abuse of your life is an error. It's a philosophical error. If you see yourself in trust, if you see yourself not as the possessor or the owner of your life, but as its trustee, then that is the gift of wisdom. Thank you.